Everybody, so welcome to the Module 3 lab demo and overview for the end of this module. Today we're going to go over spatial data and applications in which you guys can use that for cartography and things like that. And then we're also going to do a walkthrough at the end on how to actually go out and download freely available data online. That might come in handy for any future GIS projects you do. So first, one of the main things that we don't usually think about when we look at geospatial data is the perspective in which it's developed. People have very different ways of viewing things in real life, and how they translate that to different types of data can differ from person to person. So understanding that difference of perception is really important. And that's where developing your spatial awareness comes in. Different types of perceptions can actually be conceptualized or organized into spatial data. So the way that we organize boundaries or where cities are. Those are technically things that have a very spatial aspect to them because they're based on a specific place. And so how these entities are actually organized or encoded digitally refers or reflects data representation. So how you actually encode or represent these things from the real world in a GIS setting definitely influences the type of data representation you get in a cartography setting. So for example, you guys have gone over points, lines, and polygons for vector data. But one of the interesting things about that in terms of data representation is you can have the same variable, in this case buildings, but you can actually symbolize it in or create that data in different formats. So you could have points, which would just show the center of the building. You could have lines, which would show the perimeter of the building, or you could even have areas, which would give you a width and a length for those buildings. So it really just depends on which one is better for you in terms of the representation of the data you're trying to get. So just a quick recap, you have point data. Point data is discrete, it's zero-dimensional, and it only occurs at an XY coordinate. Then you have line data, which is one-dimensional, and that is only doable if you have a starting and end point. Then you have aerial data, and this actually has a width and a length. And this could include things like the area of a city, a yard, or even a lake. And in this case, in the bottom right corner, it's the area of Area 51. And then finally, you can have surfaces or raster data. So aerial polygons have a width and a length, but they don't take height into account. Surfaces actually do take that, which is what makes them three-dimensional. You can have vector surfaces, which are tins, and that is the colored picture in the center, or you can have a raster surface, which is a continuous surface that shows changes in continuous increments, and that would be what is at the bottom right of the slide. Another way to think about this too is rasters are continuous, so they are not split up by intervals, whereas tins or contour lines can be. So if you look at the left of the slide, you see these contour lines that while they have been developed to be gridded, they are still based strictly on intervals. Whereas if you go to the raster, each cell is its own different elevation, and while you can symbolize it to show intervals, the cells themselves are not based on intervals. So that brings us to the importance of data in GIS. If you have no data, there is no GIS. So you must have data in order to use a GIS system. And sadly, the majority of GIS users spend a lot of their time either creating or organizing data. It's an incredibly time-consuming and expensive process. And so one of the things we're going to go over today is ways to find already available data that you don't have to spend time formatting or fixing, or at least not as much time. So digital geographic data is any type of data that is found in a digital setting or format, such as the internet. And thankfully, due to the wonders of the internet, there are very, very many sources to get digital geographic data from. And you can get this in three different formats. So you can get the singular thematic or continuous raster. So that might be land cover or elevation. You can get the multi-layer continuous rasters, which would be aerial imagery. And then you can get vector data. So you could get cities, points, state boundaries, any of those types of things. And you can get a lot of this online through government agencies or websites for no charge or little cost. So one of the big ones that we're going to do a walkthrough for is census data. And census data is a collection method that is used to gather samples of full data sets. And when we talk about a census, there's two main types. You have a sampling census, which takes a sample of the population, or you have a full-blown census, and that is where you take a collection about all of the members in the population. So a census takes everybody into account, and because the population in the US is so large, this only occurs every 10 years. And the data that you get from the census actually tells a lot about geographic information in terms of demographics, so age, race, sex, household size, and things like that. It used to contain income information, but because they had some issues with rural areas and identifying individuals very easily, they actually removed that, because part of the reason census data is aggregated the way it is to ensure that there is an anonymity from the respondents. If you don't have a high enough population in certain places, it's very easy to know who they're talking about. So that's why that information was removed. However, they did later put it into the American Community Survey. This is a sample, not a full-blown census of the population, and it's conducted in between census years. So they have a 1, 3, and 5-year period survey set. And these ones actually do provide information about both demographics and economic information. And the reason they're able to do that is the census data is available all the way down to a neighborhood level or block level, whereas the American Community Survey is limited to tracts, and those are much larger. So if you look at the bottom right corner, there are block groups, which are fairly small, and then you have zip codes, which are sometimes smaller and sometimes larger, but then you also have counties. So depending on the scale of which you're doing your analysis, you might be able to get different information. ACS data is always available from the tract to county level, whereas census data is available at all levels. Census data is a great resource for data because it actually often determines where people can do research, especially if they are dependent on demographic research. And it's freely available through the website, which we will be walking through at the end of these slides. So then another data set that we are going to explore is the USGS data sets. And they have two types that they mainly collect, and those are the digital raster graphics and the digital line graphics. Raster graphics are georeference raster layers that are scanned from a USGS topo map. So those are basically, the picture on the right is a version of the digital raster graphics that they have digitized into an image. And then they also have topo maps that they have maintained in order to show contour lines, topography, and even trailheads. So those are really good for on-screen digitizing and actually checking to see if features you have match up with what USGS has. USGS also provides DEMs. So digital elevation models, or DEMs, are a type of digital data that show elevation in a raster format. So they are, instead of having contour lines, they have continuous values of elevation. These all come in a range of sizes and scale resolutions, and the scale of your analysis defines what level of resolution you need. So if you are doing a global scale elevation analysis, you probably don't want a very small resolution because that would be way too much data. So you would probably use a resolution of 1 or 50 kilometers versus 10 meters for a smaller area. And small scale DEMs are becoming more popular, and they're typically accurate to the point where they're about 5 to 10 centimeters accuracy. The nice thing about USGS is, as with their digital raster graphics and line graphics, they also deliver DEMs through their National Elevation Dataset. And this is seamless, high resolution, and a great improvement over previous data. Another thing you can get off the USGS website, which we'll go over, is NAIP imagery. And this is National Aerial Imagery Program. And it's actually specifically for ag surveying because people use it yearly to determine crop compliance, yield estimates, and to actually monitor how crops and crop behavior changes over a yearly basis. These are derived from photocolors that are 5 to 10 meters accuracy. And because these are gathered once a year, these are incredibly important for doing any type of land cover change or crop yield change over a time period, not just a single year. Another thing that you can get off USGS's National Map website, which we will go into later, is the National Hydrological Dataset. And this contains data about surface water and streams within the U.S. And this actually is a large improvement over previous data because previous data had the features, but they didn't actually show where the water flowed. You need that information in order to do any type of watershed analysis. So when they combined the newer data set with USGS river networks, essentially, that allowed people to actually do flow analysis for rivers and any other hydrologic data that they might have. So another type of water resource data that you can also get is the National Wetlands Inventory, which is managed by Fish and Wildlife, and it's actually produced by field observations and some level of aerial imagery, but they basically do go out and try and make sure that the aerial photos are accurate during wet seasons. And then they also have a soils data set that is collected by the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and that's a highly generalized soils map of the U.S. It's strictly for planning and for farming. It's not necessarily developed specifically for small-scale analysis. So if you are trying to figure out the best places to build a building, you want a soil that is going to be pretty compact and stable, not one that will erode away. So it's really good for planning, but not necessarily, say, geology or actual soil studies, because it's just not detailed enough. Finally, one of the last data sets that you can also find in USGS's national map is land cover, and it's essential for managing spatially distributed resources. But it's really expensive. So if you don't want to go get your own, there are 3 that are readily available. There's the land use and the land cover, which is specifically for 1970 through 1980. There's the National Land Cover Dataset, which is what we will be looking at when we get to the national map. And that actually covers from 1990 to 2011 now. And then there's also the NOAA CCAP, Coastal Land Cover, and that is specifically for coastal areas. So the NLCD generalizes wetlands and things like that, but if you are doing any type of coastal reconstruction or you need to know different types of coastal land cover types, CCAP has actually gone back and made that more detailed. So that is better for coastal areas. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually walk through getting that data online and places that you can look to get other types of data that might match what you need for your analysis. So now we're going to go through some walkthroughs on actually going to these government websites that have this data that we went over, and we're going to go through what types of data they have and basically how to get that data if you need to. So the first one that we're going to do is the census data, and as you can see, I just put in US Census data in the Google search frame, and it gives you a good long list of possible links. So there's actually 2 types of data associated with census data. there is the table data or tabular data that has all the gathered survey information. And then there's also the spatial data. So we're going to open two different windows for this. First one is we're going to go to data. So if you right click and you go to open new link in window, it'll get you a tab that looks like this. And so basically what this page is telling you is this is the type of data that you can get from the US Census. You can get census flow mappers, which will actually do the mapping on an online system for you for specific data. They have visualization tools, and they also have data tools. So if you just want quick facts, you don't actually need any detailed tables, you can go here. So what we want is data tools and apps. So we're going to click on that. If it will load, okay. So then what we want is, one of the nice things about this is this will actually give you online mapping tools. So say that you guys don't actually want to download data, you just want to look at it. One of the things we could do is go to online mapping tools, and this actually uses information from American Fact Finder and the geospatial data that I mentioned you have to get in order to make this a map. And it will take you to this specific website. And you can get pre-made tables, such as annual population estimates or things like that. And then you can also find different types of information on the functions they have, or you can even create your own reference maps through the site. The other thing that this site does, and this is what we're going to go over today, is this is where you actually get any of the tabular information you need that you have to join to your spatial data. And the way that you do that is you go here to Advanced Search or Download Center. So the Download Center would give you access to tables that are already predefined and specific to a certain variable. But say that you need more information than that. That's where the Advanced Search comes in. So we're going to go to Show All, because this has all of the information associated with data from the census. And you have to go through a few steps to get this information, but it's not too hard. So the first thing you want is the topics. And say that you want a very specific year from one of these data sets. If you go down to data set, it will actually tell you which ones you have for options. And so for example, this actually has 2014 population estimates. One thing to keep in mind is if it is not on a decadal year, then that is not a census. So 2010 was the last census we had. So if that one is 2014, that is based on an American Community Survey sample. You can also get the 5-year, 3-year, and 1-year American Community Survey estimates here. So we're going to do our demo with US Census data. So we're going to go to the 2010 SF1 100% data, and what that means is if you see SF1 100%, that is census data. It is 100% of the census data that they actually received, and it is going to have all of the topics that the census data covers. So when we add that, it'll say search using that, and then you say close. And then all of a sudden you have all of these tables here that are all part of that specific data set. If you want general profiles, one of these ones that are starred are the best because typically they have a compilation of several variables, not just one. So not just total population or not just age. So for example, if we go to age groups and sex and you click on it, this is a preview of what that will look like. So right now this is for the national total because I haven't picked a specific area yet. And this will actually tell you the total population from 5 to 90. It will tell you both sexes, males versus females. It will give you the males per 100 females estimate. and it will also do anything under 18 years of age versus older. So if you have a very specific time frame for ages that you want, they do give you several options. Now, we're going to go back. Say that we want to do this for Latah County, Idaho. Then you would click on Geographies, and our geographic type, say that we want it for all of the block groups in the county. We would go here to block group. We are going to be in Idaho, and we're going to do Latah. And then in this case, we want all the block groups in Latah. But if you don't, you can actually pick individual ones. So that's the nice thing about doing this type of search for data with the census. So now that we've added that over here, all of the data that we get now is strictly for block groups in Latah County. Now, as you can see, some of those went away, and that is because they don't have that information for that specific county or block group. But we're still going to go to total population. And this is where this becomes important, especially when you have finer resolution analysis. This will actually give you the total population per block group, and that's what you guys will want to download if you're doing a block level analysis. So say we want total population, sex by age, and maybe household size. So now you have these three tables selected, and what you want to do is you want to download them. So remember, these are just tables. So we have three selected, and we're going to say OK. And the US Census data will make this little zip file for you, and as soon as it's downloaded, you can download it. It's here. And then this is the data you just downloaded. So metadata will just tell you what each of the variables are listed as, but this DC10 with an or annual are the full table. So if you double click on one of these, H is for households or household size. As soon as Excel works, I can open this. Okay, while we're waiting for that to work, we're going to go back to the spatial data. So tiger files or line shape files are the spatial data associated with the tabular data that you guys, or that we just downloaded. And since we did a 2010 census download, we want the 2010 shape files, not the newer ones, because the census will actually change boundaries pretty commonly. So what we want to do is we want to download, and you have two types of ways to do this. You can do the web interface, which will actually walk you through how to do everything, and then you can do an FTP site. FTP sites look like this. They tend to be a lot harder to use because while they're organized well, you actually have to go into each folder and then make sure that you download all of the file extensions or you get the right zip folder. So we're not going to do that today. What we're going to do is we're going to go to the web interface. And in this case, we downloaded tables for block groups. So we're going to pick block groups. And then we want this for 2010, so we want Idaho. And we want Latah. And then we're going to say download. So then we're going to open up ArcMap. And this is our download. So this is what this will look like. And as you guys can see, this is a shape file because you have the SHP, the SHX, and the DBF files. And you want to extract these because you can't use anything in Arc if it's zipped. So we're going to extract all that. And then we're going to open up ArcMap so we can take a look at what this data looks like once it's done downloading. So if we go to add data and we go to desktop, there should now be as soon as this is done extracting, there will be a folder that has that specific shapefile. Okay, now that we have our data tables, we're going to actually see what these look like together. So I am actually going to use some older data that we have, just because we're having some issues getting this to come up. So we are going to go to M, I believe. Nope. Okay, so if we go to where I have a whole bunch of data saved, we're going to do this by blocks. So let's do Ada County blocks. So this is Ada County, Idaho, and this is blocks, so block groups would actually be larger. If we open the table, this is what your table will look like when you download it as a Tiger file. However, once you actually get the data files, so say that we want we're just going to stick with this. So say that we downloaded those 3 files and then you joined it to the block level or the block group level. This is the information you would get. This is not census information. However, this is information that is done by census block. If you want to see what this will look like after you guys get them by blocks, this is once again the block information, but once you join in that tabular data, this is what it will look like. So you will have things like the white plus, black plus, or American Indian plus for the racial data. You would have a total population per block, and then you have things like medium age, female population, household, so on and so forth. So that's census data. So we're going to head and close this. No, thank you. So now that we've gone over how to get the Tiger files and we've gone over how to get the tabular files, we're going to go to the national elevation data set. And this data set's a little harder to get, but it's very good if you need elevation data that is freely available. So this is what the page looks like. This is a little confusing because they just recently did how to get the data, so they haven't quite updated the website yet. But you want data. So if you click on data and you go to the national map, this is where you can actually get all the data that you need for elevation. And it's also where you get the national hydrography data set. So we're going to open that in its own. This is also where you can get the historical topo maps. So you can get the US topo maps that are regularly updated, or you can get the historical ones that we talked about where you can use those to compare stuff that you've digitized in past with these ones. Then we want to find data. So you can do find data and download, or you can click one of these and actually choose which one you want. So this is actually a great place to come because you basically get 4 data sets in one space. So you have elevation, so we'll open that. You have hydrography. You have orthoimagery, which is very similar to the NAPE data if it's aerial data, but I'm pretty sure it's not NAPE specifically. And then you can also get land cover data. So if we go here, so this would be elevation. This will tell you what standard DEMs are developed from, and it will actually give you the resolution. The 1 meter is actually the best one that there is, but it has very limited coverage just because it's so high in terms of resolution. So it takes up a lot of space. Or you can get the 1/9 arc, which is a 3 meter resolution, still very good, but does not cover everywhere. And then you can get the 5 meter. What this means by project basis, it's not the entire US. So they did this on a project by project basis when they gathered this information. After the project's over, they've donated the data. Seamless is typically what people get. And this is the 1/3 arc, which is the 10 meter resolution. Or you can get the 1 arc second, which is the 30 meter resolution. Obviously, the higher the resolution, the more space the data will take up, so that's where you have to make your own judgment call as to whether a 10 or a 30 meter is best for you. If you want to actually download this information, you would click on this link right here. So we're going to click on that. This is the TMM download website. So basically, this is an interactive map that will help you actually choose the area that you want. So say that we want, let's zoom in to Latah. And we're going to use a box and a point, and we're going to draw a box around Latah County. So that's where we want all of our data to come from. Then what you can do is actually go over here, and this is the data set information that you can use. So say that you guys want boundaries. If you want elevation products, you can actually choose which one you want, and in this case we want the 1/3 10 meter DEM. And we actually want this as a arc grid, that's correct. Say that we also want to do the NHD data set, we would go ahead and click that. And this is the best resolution for that data set. And if you get it in a file GDB, then that gives you all of the data. Whereas if you get it as a shapefile, it doesn't separate things out as much. And then say that we want NAEP imagery. We're going to go ahead and download that too. And then as you can see here, you can also get the National Land Cover data set. So once you have this selected, you go to Find Products, and it will actually tell you how many results there are. So we're going to go here first. NAEP data is small, so you have to download several images in order for it to work. So we're going to go ahead and say download for 1. And go ahead and say save. And then for this one, the hydrography and watersheds, we do want this. This is also split up by watershed, so you'd have to download all 8 in order to cover all of Latah, but we're just going to download 1, so we'll pick a small one. And then for elevation, it's the same deal as it is for the NAEP imagery. Elevation tiles, essentially, are split up, so you might have to download multiple tiles for an entire county, so we'll download one of those. And then we'll go to the national boundary data set, and so this we'll do for Idaho. And then as soon as most of these are done downloading, we'll look at them in ArcMap. So while we're waiting for things to download, we're going to I'm going to go over what these other data sets do. And so here's the hydrography data set information page, and basically it tells you what it includes, and it also includes the scale of the data, which is important if you're trying to do a very specific scale of analysis. If you just want water drainage basins or watershed boundaries, then the WBD data set is what you would use in order to get that. In terms of orthoimagery, this is part of where the NAEP comes in, but they also do orthoimagery from other sources. So if you remember looking at the TMN download, NAEP was under another type of imagery data set that you could download. So it just depends on what it is you guys are looking for. And if you want orthoimagery available, they actually give you a list about what is or is not available on their database. And then finally, land cover is also offered through USGS and the national map. And this is what land cover looks like if you guys have not seen a map of land cover data before. Red indicates where there is development of some sort, blue is water, and then yellow and brown typically indicate either ag or some other type of scrubland. And you can also download these at the same place that we're currently downloading data now. So let's check on our downloads. And right now it looks like this is good. So we're going to go to downloads and we're going to go to date modified. And we're going to extract this data. Okay, so now that we've got our downloads all done and we've extracted the data, we're going to go look at the DEM data that we got. I'm actually going to use a different data set to show you what this all can entail. So when we go to So we're going to add a DEM so that you guys can see what this looks like. And this is actually Clearwater County, but this is what a DEM will come up as. So this has been clipped to the county. Typically what you will see is a DEM that is a square, and then you clip that to wherever you need to. Also, this is actually a composite of 2 tiles because 2 tiles cover Clearwater County. So you might have to mosaic some things to actually cover the full range of what you need to do. So that ends our overview for today of the type of data you can download and where to get it from. And next time we should be covering editing and typology type things to kind of coincide with what you guys are doing for Module 4. So have a great day, and I will see you all next week.